Hey Rockstars, I'm JB, expert salesperson and master presenter.
I'm the doctor, psychologist, and behavioral expert.
This is the Entrepreneur Mastery Lab podcast.
We're high-performance coaches that help service-based professionals and entrepreneurs take their skills to the next level.
70% of entrepreneurs fail, which is why every week we have real talk with real entrepreneurs to help ensure you are not one of them.
We're also the inventors of the Be Rich mindset,
where we rise to mastery,
inspire greatness,
celebrate knowledge,
and help others along the way.
So join us in the lab.
And now, on to the show. Welcome to the Entrepreneur Mastery Lab podcast. I am the doctor, and I am taking you down this road today to the final episode of 2021. The year is coming to an end, and we made it. It has been a great year inside the EML podcast, and we've had a lot of awesome guests, and we just want to celebrate a little bit today. Being the last episode of the year, we thought it was a great time for some reflection. And what we chose to do for this episode is just highlight some past guests and some clips that we really enjoyed. We thought brought some value, that were exciting, that were fun. And that's what we're going to do. There's no particular order. We've had many guests this year. We couldn't include all of them. So we just picked out a few clips that we thought you would enjoy. So if you've been a long-time listener to the EML podcast, we truly appreciate you. You are amazing. You're what gives us the motivation to keep doing this. So let us know if we covered some of your favorite this episode, or which ones were your favorites. We'd love to hear that inside our Facebook group, or you can email us, or however you like. We're on all the social medias at JB and the Doctor. If you are a new guest, first-time listener, it's a great time to get started. You're going to get a little glimpse into the life of the EML podcast and what it's all about and all the great stuff that we bring you. So strap in, enjoy, as we take a little jaunt down memory lane and reflect on what a year 2021 was.
Dr. P, who is Priscilla Kusser of Priscilla Kusser Consulting Solutions.
Boundaries are important. And it's not just for the client relationship, it's also for your personal relationship. Because we have to have boundaries. If we want to stay focused on what we need to do, we have to have boundaries. So it's kind of like the person, because again, I've worked in 4 different states, right? So a lot of times when I move somewhere, those are the people I know, those are the people I interact with all the time. So then I had to stop and ask myself, who do I want to become friends with? Because now that's going to change the dynamic of our relationship. Because these are people I work with. Now I'm saying I want to be friends with them, right? Because again, I've moved so many times, right? So you have to really learn when to take that person from being a friend and when to turn on, hey, we are co-workers. And in some instances, that person may actually be a team member of yours, right? So they're kind of like your subordinate. So you really have to understand where your boundaries are. And not everybody gets boundaries. They think that if we're friends and we're out in a bar back in the good old days, right, of last year, early last year, back in those days of 2 years ago, you're out in a bar, you're in a restaurant, you're having so much fun, things are going great, everything's great. Then 2 days later, you're sitting in a meeting and something happens to that other person. They're expecting you to support them because you're friends. It's like, but no, that's not how this works. You in this instance, you are the employee being asked that question. You are actually in the wrong. I'm going to say, yeah, you're in the wrong. So for me, it becomes the boundaries, and even with boundaries with your time. Because one of the things was like a good thing and a bad was having your door open when you're in a school. Because as a school psychologist, you're itinerant. You're not in there every single day, right? You're there probably 1 day or 2 days a week. So when that door is open, people literally take it as you are available. So they would come in and they would ask you all of these questions and want you to problem solve for them right then and there, even though we have a meeting scheduled for 3 hours later. It's like, we can just do this 3 hours from now, but no, they want to have that conversation now, is that immediate gratification people have. We need to talk about this now. So then they staying there for 25 minutes, you got nothing done. And as they're leaving, somebody else is coming in and you swear there's a ticket counter outside your door and people are just pulling the ticket and coming in because they're hearing their number call, right? So at the end of it, you get nothing done. They're moving on. They're getting their problem solved. And you're 7 hours behind on a report you were supposed to write or a training you were supposed to develop. And you don't want to be rude because you want to protect that relationship, right? You don't want to damage it. You want to hear them out, let them feel appreciated. But in the same vein, I had to learn to say, not right now. I had to learn to say, not right now. That was a big part of it. I had to learn to close my door and say, I have office hours. Or even with email, I respond to email in the morning. I respond to email in the afternoon. But in the middle of the day, that is mine. So really having those boundaries and letting people realize I'm not at your beck and call. And don't think that you sent me an email at 10 o'clock. I don't respond. Then you text me at 10:10. That's not going to help the situation, right? So you have to establish those boundaries. So what I learned over the years was putting those expectations forward first. And I'm doing the same thing in my coaching business. Here are the expectations. You are going to be able to reach me, but between these hours and these hours, you can get a response by email within 24 hours. So it's really setting up those expectations and let people know, hey, I'm going to respond to you, but not immediately. We're still going to have a conversation. There are going to be times when we disagree. There are going to be times when you think whatever I'm asking you to do is outside of your skill set. You have to be open and honest. And that's another thing I really emphasize. You got to be open and honest, because if the person isn't open and honest with you in the coaching relationship, it's not going to work. It really isn't. So once you be open and honest about your expectations and your boundaries, and also let them know you're still my client, we're not friends. So you're not going to come on the call and talk about every single thing that happened in your personal life. Yes, that could be impacting why you didn't get tasks done. But I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to be that confidant for you. And that person is going to push you to take those actions that you are not taking and helping you see where you can block out some time for personal and block out some time for business so you can make progress.
The one and only, the incomparable Mr. Blake Cohen joining us.
I don't want everybody to ever think that fear is not going to be there. And even now, today, a year, we're celebrating our 1 year of this company on March 1st. And even still, last night, I had trouble sleeping, thinking, what's this next year going to look like? And that scarcity mindset and that fear that still came in. And it's a matter of just continually moving forward, regardless of having that fear and not letting it paralyze you, which some days, I'll be honest with you, I do get paralyzing fear or paralyzing anxiety. And I think I'm like, I'm just going to quit this all and just go for a steady job in tech or something like that. But the reality is just acknowledging those thoughts and then moving forward from them and recognizing you're kind of bringing yourself back to reality is so important, and pushing through that fear, whether you feel it or not.
Heck yeah, I wrote down Jade Rollers because I'm going to go look into that after, because now here the market's open.
Don't. The market was closed when I got into it. So don't trust me. It was a bad move.
There is something to be said about a business forged in fire. Everything we do, the crucible, the hotter it is, right, the stronger the steel that comes out. So they say. To start a business 1 year ago in March, by the way, congratulations on the 1 year anniversary coming up.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Love seeing that. Really do. You probably started at what is arguably the most difficult time to possibly start. And for those listeners out there listening, thinking, oh my gosh, how did they do it? I will say this, a lot of what we do that we need to do, and we get done what we need to get done, especially if we believe in it. But what a great position to be in to start a business out in such a difficult environment. And I got to imagine that it was really good for you in one sense. And here's why. I'd love for you to speak to this, Blake. You've got a way of businesses doing things, especially, when we're talking about recovery and addiction. I think you're talking about something very intimate and personal, and something that probably requires a lot of belly to belly traditionally. And all of a sudden you're starting a business built around this and built around, this life coaching and this recovery coaching, and COVID hits. And now all of a sudden, the entire business model probably needs to change, but your business is just starting. Yeah, when that happens. So a lot of shifting there, a lot of pivoting. We love the word pivot, and we love this idea of innovation. Can you share with us how the model changed and how you as a young business were able to adapt to that? Because I think you probably were in a better position than a lot of more established businesses.
Right. Well, if you remember, like March 1st, what COVID was just sort of ramping up, but nobody thought that it would last this long. Nobody had any idea. And, there is sort of something to say about my partner and I. We just dove in to this business. And fortunately, we were like, okay, we're going to have probably a slow first year. So we'll be able to figure out all of our systems as we go. So we had a general outline of what we wanted to do with the company, but we were going to see as we went, we were just going to just stick and move as we went along. And instead, obviously on March 14th, we got the surprise of, hey, everybody, it's a stay-at-home order. You can't leave. Everything has to happen from home now. Interestingly enough, I also started my master's program on March 1st. So that was a fun day. And the first class that I was taking was about strategic planning in the face of change. So it could not have been more apropos for what was going on, because I was literally in a class that talked about how to adapt to change, how to adapt your company to change. So we really pivoted, as you said, and really just adapted our model right away to utilizing Zoom, to putting in safety precautions. We didn't have that many procedures in place yet. So it really was actually okay. We haven't really done much work outside of COVID at all. We had 2 weeks of outside of COVID times. So everything all of our procedures right now are based on this virtual world that we're living in, and our sort of COVID precautions. Yet there still has been a lot of work that we've had to do in person, regardless of COVID. And throughout even the stay-at-home order, we had to go to people's houses. You can't do an intervention. Let me take that back. You can do an intervention over Zoom. There's people who've done it. I don't feel comfortable doing that. So we had to go to people's houses and really talk about innovation, really adapt, where you're talking about a 30-year-old who's struggling with an opioid use disorder, and their parents are older, they can't show up, the family's scared to travel, and this person's alone in an apartment. So you're showing up like a Jehovah's Witness or something, knocking on the door and saying like, hi, can we come in and talk to you? And have their family on an iPad on FaceTime, or really trying to adapt and overcome some of these hurdles. So it actually made us a lot more creative in the intervention process, and in the coaching process of having to really adapt and not rely so heavily on the traditional intervention and coaching models that we were taught. We had to sort of make up our own as we went.
Happy to have you join us here today. We're talking about a topic that to me is near and dear to the sales process, really incredibly important topic when we're dealing with people. Doc, this is a big one. Trust.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about trust a little bit in our Q&A the other week, which you can listen into our last podcast if you'd like. And by the way, if you are repeat listeners, thank you again for joining us. We appreciate your, wait for it, trust that we're going to continue offering some great insight, resources, and wisdom here. But thank you for listening in. If you're a new listener and you have the opportunity, you might want to check back to our last episode where we actually provided the Q&A from our free and private Facebook group. Right, Doc?
We did indeed. And if you get really froggy, keep jumping back and listening to a lot of the podcasts, because we've had some really great ones, some really great guests. We've done over 40 of them. Wow.
That's something. We do these weekly. You can trust us on that. Every single week, we've got a new episode out. A lot of the times we're interviewing other professionals, but every now and then we like to do one, just the two of us, and talk about something that's really important to us. So we did bring up trust in our live Q&A. And one of the topics and the questions that came up was just, how do I transition from selling something very transactional to something that has a longer sales cycle? And we gave some insight and some advice, but if we had to break it down to just one word, it really does come down to trust. And trust takes time to develop for the most part. How fast can someone develop trust, Doc, do you think?
So the interesting thing, if you go from the psychology world, there's been a lot of different studies on who we trust, what we trust. And like we say all the time, one size does not fit all. Not everybody is the same. So it might be different for you on how much someone trusts you, not only by the person you're dealing with, but also who you remind them of, who you look like, who you sound like, and what their kind of reference is to that person or that mind that they're hearing. Like, so it could be your sound. If you sound like someone that they trust, they're going to trust you a lot quicker. If you sound like someone they distrust, it's going to take a lot of effort on your part to get them not to think of that other person while you're talking. So there's a lot of different variables that are at play, but trust is super important.
Maybe the most important, somebody's going to buy into what you say. Fun word to use there, buy in to what you're saying. If they trust you, and if they don't trust you, you're going to be met with either voiced or unvoiced skepticism, cynicism, doubt, or outright rejection of whatever you happen to say. There are definitely ways to create more trust, and a lot of times, and I think you said it really well, Doc. Although maybe you didn't draw it out fully. A lot of times, it's not as if when we meet somebody we start with a trust level of 0. It's not like a neutral trust level. Sometimes we have a negative trust level for a number of reasons. Maybe we have a reputation that precedes us of some sort. Maybe, to Doc's point, we look like somebody that they don't like, right? That person didn't like in the past. And now you're all of a sudden associated with that. Maybe you dress the way somebody dressed that they don't like or don't trust. There's a whole lot of reasons we can start at neutral from a trust perspective, or even in the negative or the positive. So one of the safe ways to establish trust, of course, is to make people comfortable. And we've talked about this in the past in some of our podcasts, the idea of mirroring. And mirror what the behaviors and even the pace of speech that your audience has. And if you could share something like that with them, you're going to make them more comfortable. And when people are comfortable, there's a certain level of trust that's being built right off the bat. Susan Block joining us, an LMFT.
So, teaching definitely helped with the foundation, working with kids and understanding the whole dynamic of families and, just the struggles that parents have raising kids in this day and age, but it was more focused on the academics. And what I always found myself loving the most is when, kids were really struggling. I didn't love that part that they were struggling, but I loved that I was the person that they got to spend the day with. And if they were having a hard time, if their parents were going through divorce, or they were having a fight with a sibling, or, all these difficulties that kids go through, I could be there for them, and they would come to me for support. Sometimes kids got sick, I dealt with a few kids in my class that actually passed away. So having to teach them about grief, and 9/11 was during a time I was teaching, and actually being with students during 9/11 when it was actually going on. So just having this influence in their lives. So shifting gears, when I started private practice, in the very beginning, I didn't know who my ideal client was. I really just wanted to work with, adults, and I even worked a little bit with kids and teens. And I knew in the very beginning that working with children in a therapy setting was not ideal for me. I found working with couples was something that I became very passionate about. And it really wasn't something I sought out. I think the couples actually sought me out. I always say your specialty finds you more than you seek it out. And couples were coming in, going through all sorts of issues. Infidelity was a big one that kept showing up. And I just really fell in love with it. And so I got an opportunity to work with families, but starting with the parents rather than the children. And that was a really great shift for me, because if the parents are good, then the rest of the family is going to be good. And I've seen that time and time again with the couples and the families that I do see. And so just really allowing my authentic specialty to find me has been amazing. And having the foundation of the education with kids was a great beginning. Well, and it's actually pretty interesting, because when I work with couples, a lot of times in the very beginning of our work together, they'll say, oh, I need to get my teenage daughter, son, to do therapy. Do you work with kids? Do you work with families? And most times I'll tell them, let's start with you guys. Let's see where things go. And most of the time, their child never needs the therapy, because when the parents are good, it just impacts the whole system of the family. And they're getting along better with their kids are happier, they're noticing the difference with their parents. I've even had a couple ones that told me that their dog became more loving with them. Like the dog would sit on the couch in between them, and they're like, it's so odd, our dog is actually hanging out with us more. So who knew that was a thing?
Suzanne Taylor King of Tailored Coaching.
I think one of the most powerful things a coach a long time ago had me do was have a journal of all my wins. And whether it was making a difference with somebody, whether it was an aha moment a client had, whether it was, selling something that cost $10,000, whether it was a parenting success, doesn't matter. When there's something big that felt really good, write it down with the date, so that you remember, so that you can go back to that. And, celebration's pretty powerful effect on your brain. It releases dopamine, which is awesome, right? If we release dopamine before a sales conversation, then I'm much more likely to present in a way that feels natural, feels authentic to the other person, because I'm in a positive vibration before I get on the phone with them. And it sounds a little, woo woo, but it's really not. If you just get yourself in the headspace of, I've done this, I'm successful in here, and it's not blowing smoke up your butt, right? It's actual tangible successes from your journal. I remember when my intuition was right. I remember when I read this person right. And just get in that state of being, you're 100 times more successful selling.
So everything she just said there is also science. And as we like to talk about science a little bit here, when you're changing any kind of behavior, there's three things, and you guys have probably heard me talk about the 3 R's. You have to review what you're doing, you have to repeat what you're doing, and then you have to reward what you're doing. That reward is the reinforcement. And that's the piece that SDK was just talking about, right? Is that you're reviewing what you're talking about, you're getting your back into that mindset, then you're going to repeat what you're about to do on the phone, and then you're rewarding it and reinforcing it that it's working. And that's what keeps that mindset going positive. And that's what keeps you being able to make those adjustments and move forward. So yeah, it is releasing that dopamine, but it's also reminding you that this is the strategy that you're trying to do. So it keeps you in that mindset to do it right.
Yes.
And by the way, physics doesn't disagree with this either. Everybody's made up of particles and waves simultaneously, and they're constantly moving and vibrating. And the entire universe can be explained as a sympathetic response to the vibrations of everything around it in a lot of ways. So, physics agrees with this too. It's not just psychology, and, we can call it woo woo if we want, right? And some people look at it that way, and that's cool. I'm not going to knock that. But I think there's some validity to everything that you're saying. And if we get ourselves in the right space, we are more likely to stay in that space, and we're more likely to attract things that resonate with the energy.
Yes.
When we're in that space.
Yes, 100%. And I think, entrepreneurs especially, they struggle with confidence and comparisonitis, and they have to be on social media. They have to sell themselves. They have to talk about themselves a lot in a positive light and encourage people to spend money with them. So I think they struggle with these things more than, someone like my husband, who works a job, finishes his work, he's done for the day. He still gets his paycheck, whether he sold anything or not. I think it's different for different people. And I think that one of the things that attracted me to this work so much is that I was really, really good at sales when I was selling someone else's stuff. I was a rock star selling my boss's work. I would talk about it, I would brag about it, and his dentistry was expensive, probably the most expensive one in town. And I hit my sales numbers without even thinking about sales numbers because I didn't believe in them in healthcare. And then when it came time to sell my own stuff, it did not go well in the beginning.
Two different types of people out there in the world. Those that get off to a strong start and those that don't. You agree or you disagree?
I'm going to hope there's more than two, but I get what you're saying. And yes, there's definitely a strong start or a not so strong start.
So what are you? Are you a strong starter or a not so strong starter?
I would say most of the time I'm a strong starter. There's always going to be there's outliers, but I would say most of the time I got strong start covered. But that's a little different than quick start. You want to tell the difference? Because I think that can be confusing to a lot of our listeners, the difference between a strong start and a quick start.
Yeah, really, really important difference. A quick start is if you think back to when you were a kid, there was a kid that would get the test and they'd start answering the questions on the test and they fly through the test. They want to be the first one done and they are fast, fast, fast. Boom, test is done. They hand it in and they didn't read the instructions. They did the test completely wrong. They failed the test. That's a quick start a lot of times. There's a big difference between a quick start and a strong start.
It's also a quick end.
Yeah, that student didn't do too good. I swear I ended up fine. Big difference between a quick start and a strong start. They can be not mutually exclusive, right? You can have a strong start that is a quick start, and maybe that's in some ways ideal in a lot of instances, but there is a big difference. So strong start means starting off, I think with a clear vision and mission and action plan to get to where you need to go.
Right. So you can start strong whether you start quick or not. And I think that confuses a lot of people because we feel like if we're taking the time to do our due diligence, if we are putting some research into it and making sure that we know the direction we're headed, that's what leads to that strong start. Sometimes you can have a quick start and have a strong start, like JB said, but a lot of times when we do those quick starts without doing any kind of prep, we just blindly walk into a situation and that kills your strong start a good amount of times, because then you start to see everything unravel in front of you.
Well, and we know the challenge with sprinting out without necessarily thinking ahead and being thoughtful and deliberate. We've known it since we were kids when we read ourselves Aesop's Fables, right? The tortoise and the hare. There's a reason, there's a message behind that. And part of that message is, just because you get off to a sprint doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win the race. Your best golfers out there, a lot of times they don't just drive for the green. They actually, take a look at the course. They think about their stroke and their swing, and they plan out where they're going to hit the ball so that they can get the ball in the hole with less strokes. So it's not just about quick, it's strong. Big difference.
So you asked me earlier if I come out to strong starts or not. I thought I did till you just gave your two examples. And when I'm on the golf course, there's no kind of good strong start in that world at all. Just try to get the ball to go in the air.
Yeah, golfing is, I enjoy playing. I don't enjoy watching. I don't enjoy other people watching me play, I should say. Golf is not my best game.
I enjoy the outside.
Yes. You know what? It's one of the benefits of living in sunny South Florida, right? We could go golf at almost any time. So strong starts, you said you think that you tend to get off to a strong start. Doc, you've got your own businesses. You've got the business we run together. What's your personal experience been this year? Did you get off to a strong start, a quick start, both?
I'd say a little of both. And this is where I think that being different about whether quick starts or strong starts make differences. So I actually have three businesses, and two, I would say, are fairly strong starts. One had a quicker start because I'd done the due diligence in the past and it was just a continuation. So this year I was able to start that one strong and quick. Another one of the businesses, maybe the business we're doing together, we can see if there's a agreement on this one. I think we've gotten off to a strong start, but it wasn't necessarily a quick start. We had to be more diligent as we were doing it. We had to do a little bit more planning and putting systems in place. But once we came out of that, I think the start's been very strong. And then my other business, which is going through a rebrand, that has not had a strong start nor a quick start. And that is because there's only so much brain capacity one can do in putting that energy towards these things. And I knew that it wouldn't be a strong start, so I pulled back on that start to make sure that when I do get to that start, it can be strong. So some of the differences in how one person can go through many different ways.
Ryan Sullivan of Podcast Principles.
People, I didn't realize that podcasting was there was like skills involved in it. I just thought, because I started by putting one webcam and then buying 2 USB microphones and then just sitting and talking, and then as I went forward, I realized that podcasting is also a tool for branding and business and growth and content. And then I just watched a video the other day, a guy making $1 million a year off just off the podcast, right? And so, yeah, and that's crazy. So, yeah, I think over the past few years, the podcasting has changed for me as I've done different podcasts. Luckily, I got to work with a mentalist. We got to work with celebrities. That was a lot of fun, actors and NFL players and things like that. And so then that was one angle. That podcast failed. So so it's just, and it was because of a bunch of different reasons, marketing and budget and not really understanding how to utilize the people who were on it. So there's so many different aspects to it, and there's a million ways to waste your time and your money and your resources. So doing it effectively, I've been on a mission to try to figure out how to do it effectively for you. So for whatever your goal is, I even bought podcastpsychology.com because I plan on launching a platform about the psychology behind podcasting. And obviously not the doctor. I'm not I don't understand the real psychology, but just, that type of a lens. I think there's so much to it, and there's so many ways and so many ways you can use it or lose it, right? Like you said, people will stop. That's why I'm not launching a podcast if we're not doing 12 episodes or more, because the hump is that 8 episodes. I mean, I've done over 100 interviews, even my podcast, over 60 episodes, but there was times when I stopped. Even in COVID, I stopped. Why did I stop? I could have easily done Zoom. I have an in-person podcast, but I could have easily done Zoom. So I've even experienced the things that make people stop. So I've really been on the mission to, first of all, figure out how to use podcasts for whatever that person's goal is. I've been stumped before. People come to me, they're like, I have this industry niche podcast. I had one that it was about rental companies, like people who rent machines. Like that was the podcast. That's what it was about. And it was so niche that I didn't even have an answer for this guy of how he can frame it to make money with it. Right. So I love the challenges of trying to figure out how podcasting can work and then trying to figure out how to actually make that a reality. So that's, on the outside, yeah, it's podcast launches. That's really what I do, but I love the intricacies and trying to use podcasts for a certain, even with this, it's simple. It's really clarity on the goal and clarity on the outcome. When they go to us, they're like, are you concerned about the plays? It's like, I edit the audio. I mean, I don't have anything to do with the plays. I really do, make that clear in the beginning, so it's about clarity on the goals and consistency. And like I said, I stopped my podcast too. You know what happened? I had 0 plays after I stopped. That's, so I think that's just what happened, right? Shocking. And I think people also have, it's the clarity on the goals, consistency, and then which relates to the goals is the expectations. If you think on episode 12, you're going to be Joe Rogan level, that's just insane. And you might just have crazy goals, but maybe if you have $100,000 a month to spend on marketing or something, then maybe you can get to that level fast. I think their goals don't align with what they're actually doing. And they have this weird, I come from music. Know your music I know the most talented people in the world who have not even released a song, right? They're not famous. They don't have fans because they don't do. You could have all the talent in the world and not release music and nobody will know who you are. You'll never make it, you know? So, and I know people who are way less talented who are making a living off of Spotify, you know, just from their plays. So I think it's just this misalignment, I think, is really, and that's business, right? Like, you know, JB, it's like, it's the same. You have to treat these podcasts like a business. Like if you don't treat it like a business, even if you don't make money from it to start, then you're going to fail because your goals were misaligned with your actions. So I think that's the big thing that happens with people with podcasts a lot of the times. Yeah.
Here we've got Joy Nicholson with Unleash Your Marketing and Unleash Your Focus podcast.
You know what? I actually love this question because I get this asked quite a lot, and especially with peers that do a lot of high ticket sales. And they get upset with me and they would say to me, why not do high ticket sales? I'm like, you don't understand. I've been there. I've done that. I didn't enjoy it. And for me, it's not about, yes, money, obviously you need to live, right? So you have to create money, but it's not about the money that's driving me. It's the result that I get from people. Now, I have this incredible passion and I can't explain where it comes from. It's just something I've always had, is I want to help small business owners. I want to help them to create the thing that they want. So a lot of the people in my group coaching is people that they're just starting a business. They've been in business for like a year. So they technically haven't really made a lot of money and they just don't know what they're doing. But also it's businesses that, because I took myself back, and this is how this all came about. I took myself back. When I started out, I was in a fortunate position where I could buy into coaching programs and I could, and I've learned about failures, exactly what you guys are talking about. I've learned about failures, and like I penalized myself for having failures in the past. And then this course taught me it's like you actually need to fail to succeed. And a lot of business owners, and that I stick with me. I actually have a thing here about failures to succeed, but that stick with me. And a lot of the time when I'm speaking to these small business owners that I'm helping now, they are so stuck in their failure ways. They don't think that they can ever succeed. And then they've bought into these expensive coaching programs and done for you services. But then unfortunately, they're literally wasting their money because they didn't go into it with the right mindset. Or unfortunately for them, it's just like a guru teaching them stuff that doesn't help for them because they're not at that level. And this is what I've done, which I think it's different than what I've seen other people do, is I take them back all the way to the beginning and I teach them step by step how to implement things. And it's because I really want to see them. I want to see businesses pop up everywhere. I want to see the world's problems being solved with people breaking the poverty cycles, teaching their children things, with businesses popping up everywhere, because the more businesses, the less poverty. And that's just, I know it sounds cliche, but that's the thing that drives me with all these business owners. And I'll give you an example, like here in Oxford where I live. I mentioned to you guys in the beginning, like I live in Oxford. So it's a small town. It's got about 2,500 people. Maybe a little bit more because there's been some housing building and things going on. But this town, we have a Facebook group because, small community, people like to talk and everybody knows everybody. And there's this Facebook group that is about the businesses that's in this town. And I've more or less calculated it. So in this tiny little community, there is about 25% of people living here that actually owns a business. That is a lot for like a tiny town like this. And unfortunately, all of these businesses, and most of them are brick and mortar, anything from fixing lawnmowers to walking dogs. Like, I'm not joking. There's all kinds. And we even have somebody that like puts spa pools in, and other people doing fencing. It's really it's so different, the type of businesses that's out here. And none of those people have the money to buy into coaching programs because, they're only making just enough to live. And that's where I come in. And I want to teach these people to go to the next level, to grow and scale, to actually generate leads on a consistent basis. And yeah, so I hope that answered the question, but that's really the drive that I've got.
Positioning, Doc, in this sense, we're talking about what messaging are you putting out there to somebody, and how are you doing it? So when you think positioning, maybe you should think elevator pitch or commercial. If you're part of a BNI, for example, what's your elevator pitch at BNI, or your short commercial, whether it's 30, 60, 90 or 2 minutes long, whatever it happens to be. Positioning is putting something in front of somebody else. And I'm being really vague there intentionally, because I think people put the wrong thing in front of other people. And that's what I want to talk about.
Again, mind out of the gutter, please.
I don't know if anybody actually followed me, but I'm going to give an example. Positioning might be, I'm going to tell you about what makes me so special. That, by the way, is probably not good positioning.
I was on the edge of my seat, though, to find out what that was.
Positioning might be telling you how my product or service is so special. That also probably isn't the best sort of positioning. And I want to explore that, Doc. Why would I turn around and talk about what makes me unique or what makes my product unique? Why isn't that good positioning?
Probably don't want to lead out about yourself before you've even hit that pain point, figuring out, can you be helpful for someone? What are they actually going through?
And if they didn't follow me, they sure as heck just followed you, I bet, because that was about as plain of English as it can be. Here's the thing. We said it already. It ain't about me. It ain't about you. It's not about us. It's about them. And when I say them, I am talking about your clients, your ideal clients. It's all about them.
That's where the focus needs to be.
So what's good positioning?
Well, I think to give an example of further example of poor positioning, and this might be something that people can relate to if you've ever been to a networking event and you say hi, and then the person that you said hi to shoves their business card at you and just starts talking about themselves for about the next 10 minutes. That's also a good example of bad positioning. Don't do that.
Remind me not to go to your networking events, because I've been at too many of those, Doc. Too many. They are also pretty painful. That's what they made the bar for. Even if you don't drink, you might feel like you need a bar after somebody like that. Positioning is all about the client. And the fact is, every client has a need. And if they're an ideal client for you, you have a way to solve for that need. But positioning, and really good positioning, we zero in, we triage down, we become, my favorite word, hyper-focused on the client's need. That is good positioning.
So what would be some great ways that our audience can take what we're saying and put it into action? What are some good ways to start?
You need to be crystal clear. And I'm using crystal for a reason. There needs to be absolutely no lack of focus on this. You need to know exactly who your client is. You might have more than one. You might have 2 or 3. Hypothetically, you could have even more than that, but you probably have 2 or 3 sweet spot clients. And those clients have a very, 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 very specific need that you are solving for with whatever you do. And whether you're selling a product, you're selling a service, doesn't matter. Those clients have a very specific need and you are solving for it. And so the first step in this, Doc, is you got to know exactly who those clients are, what their problem is, and how it impacts them, why it's a pain point. That's step one.
So what I'm hearing is some other people might understand this as like your avatar, your customer avatar is a popular word that we hear out there. But identifying that, so knowing who that you want to work with. A lot of times when we're coaching, what we hear is, who do you want to work with when we ask that question? And they'll say, well, I can work with everybody. I can work with anybody. Well, that does not help. That is not good positioning. That is not being crystal clear on who you're reaching out to and which pain point that you have to help. Oh, wasn't that fun? It was great to listen to some of those episodes. They bring back some wonderful, wonderful memories. Hopefully for some of you also. And if it was your first time listening, I hope you enjoyed some of the things that you heard, and you're going to go back and listen to all the other episodes that are out there for the EML podcast. It's been quite a year. We've changed some things up throughout the year, new open, new name, and where we've come is just truly amazing, and we are so grateful to be able to make it here. And we couldn't do it alone. We have a great team behind us. None of these podcasts would even see the light of day if it wasn't for our great assistant, Annabelle. She puts all the hard work into making these live for you to be able to hear and make us sound better than we actually are. So we truly appreciate all her effort. And if you are part of our Facebook group, the Entrepreneur Mastery Lab Facebook group, same name, makes it real simple for you. Then you've worked with Antoinette, who also a great member of our team, who puts a lot of effort into making sure our content in there gets delivered to you and stays top of the line. So Annabelle and Antoinette, we truly, truly appreciate you, and we couldn't have done any of this without either of you. And of course, our listeners, we truly, truly appreciate you. You keep us motivated to do this. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you'd like to see more of. Let us know who you'd like to see as a guest in the future. We are really excited for the new year and all the great things that we have planned. We have some amazing guests already on the docket. So we're going to have a lot of fun. And let's do it. Let's get into 2022. Oh my goodness, that sounds so weird to say. So enjoy the rest of the year. Celebrate. Reflect. I'm going to go find JB because I think he's been partying already, so I got to catch up. So we're going to see you in the new year. I look forward to it. Until then, peace out, yo.